Everyone's thrilled to hear about more recreational activities in their city. We've got some great news for the residents of Athens, as you guys are all set to get some great new tennis and pickleball courts. Even though the budget for this project was already finalized, there have been some ups and downs in making this vision a reality. In this video, we'll be talking about this new recreational project, the latest updates, and why these sports are becoming popular with U.S. residents. First up, the tennis courts and pickleball courts project. At the moment, all we know is that the Arts, Parks, and Recreation Department in Athens is working on the construction of 2 tennis courts and 4 pickleball courts in the city. However, there were some issues with the cost estimates on the project, which is why it's been referred back to the City and Safety Services Committee. Originally, the Arts, Parks, and Recreation Department believed it would cost around $250,000 to construct all of these new sports courts for the public. Unfortunately, on March 7th, the Athens City Service Safety Director announced that the cost estimate has now increased to $375,000. Allocating another $125,000 for a recreational project sounds like quite the challenge for the City Council. After all, the Council only has a limited budget for an entire city to run. Do you think that they would continue the project? We sure hope they do. The cost estimate increased once the groundwork and preparation requirements were evaluated. It's not easy to find open spaces for sports courts, and it's even harder to get all the prep work done at the building site. The APRD has been considering an area west of East Park Drive for these new courts, but with the recent increase in prices of goods and services, the building site seems to be too expensive to work on. Will we really get new courts? Enough with all this bad news, though. Despite the new and increased price estimate, the City and Safety Services Committee is still considering investing in these new tennis and pickleball courts. Micah McCary was the one who first introduced this idea at the council meeting in February 2021. However, the increased cost estimate has even pushed McCary to support referring his ordinance back to the CSSC. McCary believes that our community is full of members with different interests and priorities. He also added that it would be a shame to disappoint community members if the entire budget was allocated to pickleball, with nothing left for the tennis courts. Now the ball is in the City and Safety Services Committee's court. They're the ones who decide whether it's a good idea to invest such a massive amount into a recreational project for the people of Athens. What does the CSSC do? The City and Safety Services Committee, or CSSC, does more for our community than we credit them for. Council committees meet on a monthly basis to develop new plans and advance the goals of existing plans. The CSSC focuses on 4 incredibly important areas. First, they ensure that the community feels safe and secure in their area. Second, they allocate resources to meet growing human services need. This includes significant areas of social development, including healthcare and education. Third, they focus on providing more recreational activities to the community, like tennis and pickleball courts projects, of course. And finally, they respond to any growing problems in society, such as drug abuse and misuse. With all of these functions, nobody can say that the CSSC does nothing for society. Even if the pickleball and tennis court project is delayed because of the increased cost, there's no reason to criticize the CSSC. Next, the Athens Arts, Parks, and Recreation Department. Now, why is the Arts, Parks, and Recreation Department important? It's because they mainly focus on public and private events for citizens. If you love taking a stroll in the park or enjoy the art in a museum, then you've got the Arts, Parks, and Recreation Department to thank. These recreational spaces provide a safe space for all citizens to gather for festivals, events, and activities. Apart from simply developing areas for recreation in Athens, the department also works on improving the quality of life there. You'll often find interesting activities like swimming lessons or bicycle safety classes to make sure that everyone gets the best facilities to enjoy themselves. Parks and Recreation Departments are also the ones to thank for lifeguards at municipal pools, playground safety inspections, and free bicycle lights if you ever need any. Scientific research has always told us about how being close to nature can reduce stress levels and help people relax. To put this ideology in practice, Athens Arts, Parks, and Recreation Department wants to get people moving and improve their fitness and health. That is exactly why the new pickleball and tennis courts are so important. They give us the motivation we need to participate in new physical activities in the community instead of being hooked to a mobile device all day long. Can they lower the price estimate? Everything comes down to one big question: what will be the final decision on the pickleball and tennis courts? The APRD is currently revising its original plans to do something about the increased price. They're actively looking for alternatives that could lower the price estimate. We've also heard that maybe the advisory board could decide on a smaller number of courts to decrease the cost or find a new location to reduce preparation costs. Even though there's no fixed location for the courts as of yet, the land on East Park Drive did look like the most suitable space for the multiple tennis and pickleball courts. We still can't say much about how the advisory board would lower the price estimate, but there are a few speculations about what could be done. Perhaps the City Council should start assembling and delivering their data more effectively. This would help the advisory board make better decisions about spending. If the cost of constructing the recreational courts was accurate in the first place, we wouldn't be going through this issue of managing costs at all. all. Another approach to the situation is that the government could stop relying on decentralized decision-making entirely. When such decisions are constantly pushed down to local levels, all we see is more delay in taking action. Maybe a single leadership team for a project such as this would be a better idea. This team can consider all the possible ways to minimize costs, while still giving the Athens community what they were promised. Why do we need new courts? At this point, you might be wondering why we need new tennis and pickleball courts at all. Well, pickleball seems to be the fastest growing sport in the United States. Surprised? Yeah, we were too. Even though the sport is getting popular with citizens, there's still no dedicated outdoor pickleball courts. So where are the people supposed to play? There are only 2 courts behind the rec center in Athens, both of which are painted on old and abandoned tennis courts. It would be really great to have new dedicated pickleball courts that aren't shared with the tennis court. Community members sometimes use the 8 pickleball courts at Ohio University, but even these are painted on old indoor and outdoor tennis courts. If we want more pickleball players from the city of Athens, then it's time for the city council to give people a place to practice. There's also a financial aspect of making these new courts. Many small and medium-sized towns across the U.S. are already cashing in on pickleball tournaments for their communities. If Athens wants to be a part of that scene, then the first step is to have a dedicated court space for the game. We hope the city considers all the pickleball players in the community when they finally reach a decision about the courts. A council representative did mention that the city is aware of how excited the pickleball community was to finally be recognized, but we hope that their excitement isn't shattered in the light of increased costs. Although we still don't know how many pickleball and tennis courts Athens would get and where, there's some speculation that a few new courts might be available to use by spring 2023. We've got our hopes up for that. Pickleball and tennis, are they popular in the U.S.? Most U.S. citizens know about pickleball by now. This paddleball game is becoming the fastest growing sport in America, and that's all the more reason for you to start playing too. Interestingly, pickleball is a cross between 3 games: tennis, badminton, and table tennis. Even though the game started off as a family tradition between 3 middle-aged fathers in Washington, there are now over 4.8 million players across the country. The Sports and Fitness Industry Association even added that sports enthusiasts are starting to capitalize on this spike in popularity of the fun paddleball game. Pickleball already has 2 national tournaments, both of which started in the last 4 years. Organizers are trying to get more corporate sponsors to help grow the sport and even take it to the Olympic Games in the next few years. As for tennis, it's always been a popular game in the U.S. There are about 17.9 million tennis players in the U.S., which is why we definitely need new courts for people to practice and polish their skills. In contrast, pickleball is still a relatively new game, with only about 2.5 million players. We believe there's more to sports in the U.S. than just traditional games like football and basketball. If there were more opportunities for people to explore, then we might just see more U.S. players competing in international tournaments for our country. After all, recreational activities are what bond communities together and create a sense of group spirit. That's a wrap for this video. See you next time.